Hey guys, it's been about a week since I posted a video talking about these new Hypetrain DAB motors, and I wanted to do a follow-up now that I've had a little bit more time on those motors. And also I had a chance to mount these Emax 1106 6000 kV motors on an identical build. So everything on these two quads is exactly the same except for the motors. And I've had a chance to fly them both a little bit, and I wanted to just let you guys know how it went and my thoughts after living with these motors for about a week now. So as I mentioned in the first video, these Hypetrains are really powerful motors for their size. They're a little bit smaller, actually a lot smaller than the Emax. There you go. They're like half the height. Now these are 1106, but still they're like half the height of those motors, and they seem to produce more thrust. I would say I could look at the thrust numbers and probably get a better idea, but when you're actually flying it, it feels like they're a bit more powerful on the top end. And the biggest thing I noticed though was just how smooth they were all the way through. The quad really tracks smoother. The throttle seems more predictable. Part of that could be the weight, which I'll talk about in a second. But I gotta say, I'm very impressed. These are by far the best motors that I've ever flown in this size. Now these are not bad. They're powerful. They're very similar. The flight characteristics are close. But I should talk about the weight. I think that's really kind of what it comes down to. So like I said, these are identical builds, and they're heavy because they're running two cameras. So this is the Emax 1106. It's coming in at 105.5 grams. And this is the same quad with the 1104 DABs. 99 grams with my little armored soft mount TPU armor things for the motor. So yeah, quite a bit lighter on a quad of this size. I mean, normally who cares about 5 grams, but when your whole quad is that light, it really, you can feel it. So something else I should mention is the batteries I'm running are pretty light. I'm running 450 3 cells. I like to keep the quad light in this size. Just for my style of flying, it works better. So these DAB motors seem to be just a tad more efficient, and they don't hit the battery quite as hard as the Emax's, which is kind of to be expected since it's 1106 versus 1104 and it's a heavier quad. So in the air, yeah, hands down, this guy is much more fun to fly for me. Another thing that I noticed is just kind of the prop wash handling, and again, that could be due to the weight. This guy definitely does better with the prop wash. I get it quite a bit more oscillations, even with a similar tune. You might be able to tune a little bit of that out, but ultimately I think it's easier to start with a rig that doesn't have issues like that to start with. So yeah, prop wash, everything just a little bit smoother on these guys. So I mentioned in my first video that on the maiden flight with this quad, with the Hypetrains, I did have a minor crash, and I noticed a little bit of maybe a flat spot, kind of a ticking in the bearings on both motors on this side. It was a minor crash, and I didn't expect to have any damage from such a small impact. So yeah, after crashing this thing a few more times, I gotta say that the bearings do tend to develop those. I think I've got it on 3 of the 4 motors now. Does not seem to affect the performance too much. Nothing that I could really tell, but it's definitely there, and it's probably not helping. So I want to show you guys something. I have a theory as to why the bearings developed a flat spot so early on, and a feeling that I might be replacing bearings more often on this motor. But like I said, it's a good flying quad, an excellent flying quad, and I don't care. I'll replace bearings if I have to, just to have something really nice in the air. So I wanted to show you guys some other motors that are in the 1104, 1105, and kind of the typical setup that I've seen. These are 3 other 1104, 1105 motors that have sort of a traditional 1.5 millimeter shaft going all the way through, and out the bottom. Something a little different about the DAB motors is there is a 2mm shaft, quite a bit beefier, that goes through the motor, and then on the outside it tapers down to 1.5 mil for your props. So a couple things about that. It changes the bearings that are run, and if you look at these guys side by side, so this is the smaller shaft and the bearings that go with that. This is the DAB motor. Inside diameter of the bearing on the DAB motor is quite a bit bigger, 0.5 millimeter. It's a lot on a motor this size, so that means smaller balls in the bearing. Those forces that in a crash would normally bend a shaft like this and then maybe transfer that force into the bell and break the magnets. I think this motor's gonna, the shaft and the magnets and all that are gonna hold up probably better, but that bearing is gonna take a beating because there's just a little bit less to kind of work with on the inside of that bearing. So that's one thing to think about. You may end up replacing bearings more often, but the rest of the motor is probably going to be more durable. Something else, this is sort of your typical 4-hole bottom with a 1.5 shaft, and then you've got your soft mount little TPU guy. The hole in the middle there is about the right size on a lot of these prints for the C-clip that goes with a 1.5 mil shaft. If you try to run this type of this size hole on the bottom of the DAB motor, you're gonna have a problem. Can't really see it when it's all put together, but basically the C-clip is gonna rub against the inside of this, and you don't want that. So I would recommend, if you do want to soft mount these guys, go on Thingiverse and download the DAB specific TPU mount that I made. It's free, why not? So this version has a little bit bigger hole on the inside that will clear the bigger C-clip, give you a little extra room. It won't rub up against it. And it's just got the 2 holes, which is all you need. So to sum it up, I'd say the DAB motors are fantastic in the air. They're a lot of fun to fly, but the bearings may be a bit fragile in that setup, at least in my experience. So should also mention that I did make a version of the TPU mounts that have a little guard on the front, and that's also available on Thingiverse if you want to try that. I'm going to try my best to keep these things from taking a hard hit because they fly so nice. This guy, I like it. If you've got some experience with these motors, I would love to hear about it. Feel free to comment, let me know your thoughts. These are running the same props, the GemFan 2540s. If you're running other props and you've got other information about these motors that maybe I haven't shared here, feel free to let me know. In the meantime, I'm going to fly these a little bit more. I'm going to crash them probably a lot more, and I'll report back in like a month or so, let you know how things have gone. Cheers.